During the course of the last half hour, you have revolutionized my internal thoughts on attorneys. You have a very nice bedside manner, and you are not icky in the least. Hello, everyone, entrepreneurs and entreprenettes. Another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project podcast. Today, our guest is Richard Gearhart, Esquire, founder partner of Gearhart Law, and more importantly, he's nationally recognized voice of entrepreneurship and intellectual property. As the founding partner of Gearhart Law, he helps creators and companies protect patents, trademarks, and copyrights around the world. He also co-hosts the nationally syndicated Passage to Profit, Road to Entrepreneurship, broadcasting from WOR 710 in the Big Apple. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this, and you guys do a great job. So I'm really glad to be here and want to share with your audience. So.
Well, you're very kind, but let's get deep into the woods, because a lot of clients in operating their businesses, whether it's goods or services, come into this crossroads on what needs protection and how do we protect it. So I had this idea. What if you and I start up a nice lemonade stand? But it's not going to be any lemonade. It's going to be organic, and the lemons are going to be procured from Nicaragua, and the soil is going to be so fertile and moist and nutritious that these are going to be the best lemons ever. And you're going to start up in your town of Summit, New Jersey. Okay. And we're going to have a really cool logo. And because you're an attorney, we're going to have a logo with the scales of justice. They're going to be lemon-shaped scales of justice, and you're going to have lemons on each side. And every kid in America is going to want your lemonade. I mean, they're going to.
I already want it. I'm there with you. Yeah.
Their Abercrombie and Fitch with their 6-pack, and they're going to have all their cool sneakers, and they're going to be wanting to drink your lemonade out of school. But you've got a really cool brand, you got a really cool logo, and you got some slogans. And all of a sudden, people start mimicking us, and they start copycatting us. And enter stage left, superhero intellectual property attorney, Richard Gearhart. How do we protect our lemonade stand?
Okay. Well, so there's a couple of different elements there, right? And the first part is probably the most important, is protecting your brand. So if you have a lemonade stand and it's and you want to protect your brand for sure, right? And so we do that through trademarks. And, the way we would approach it is we would evaluate your name to make sure that it falls within the category of a trademarkable name. And then we would do a search of the various trademark databases that we have access to make sure that somebody else hasn't taken the name. And so this, in my opinion, is almost more important than actually filing a trademark application. You want to know, does somebody else already have the intellectual property that you want to use? And so if it's not original in the sense that it's somebody else has protected the brand with a trademark, then you want to pick another name, because you don't want to be in a position where 2 or 3 years down the road, where your business becomes successful, you get a cease and desist letter from this third party. Maybe they're across the country, right? And one day, one of their customers stumbles across your website, and they call their other customer over on the other side of the country and said, I'm confused because I saw this website and I thought it was you. And then the owner of the trademark gets upset. He says, am I losing business over this? And
Richard, you bring up a good point, Richard. You said original, but it's 2025, and there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of businesses in America that have been operating for now hundreds of years. So much of new ideas are derivative. How do we define what's original. Like if you have Gearhart lemonade, the juiciest lemons in America, what's to say that Gearhart lemonade cannot be confused with something else that maybe was loosely correlated with apple juice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is where the search becomes an important ingredient of the analysis. So we have different types of searches that we can run. We can run a search of just existing trademarks. We can run a search that is scorched earth. It looks at all the business names and all of the business registries. It looks at URLs, domain names. It looks at state trademark databases. And for most entrepreneurs, just doing the trademark search is enough. And we always tell entrepreneurs, well, before you pay us to do a trademark search, have you looked on the internet, seen if everybody else is using the name? And you'd be surprised. Because people become infatuated with the name. They love it. And they kind of get to this emotional spot where they kind of don't want to know if somebody else has it, right? But this is where we come in, because we can kind of push the issue a little bit. And we can say, well, we got to check. We got to make sure. And if they've looked on the internet, there's nothing like it. Sometimes people will say, well, I found this is kind of close. What do you think? Then that's where the experience of a trademark attorney, intellectual property professional, comes into play. Because we can look at the names. We have enough experience looking at a lot of different names to say, well, yeah, could be a problem for you, or no, it's not going to be a problem for you.
Now, Richard, I didn't forget my 5th grade civics class.
No.
Now, are you doing these searches on a federal basis, or is this state by state?
So for the most part, we do federal searches, but we also can do state searches. And in some cases, a federal trademark might not be necessary. In order to get a federal trademark, you have to be doing business between states. You have to have interstate commerce. And if you're a local business and you're not doing interstate commerce, then, state trademark may be the best solution for you.
Okay, so when we're starting out this lemonade stand, we're going to file in New Jersey because that's where your business is located. And then as we grow throughout the Northeast and the Atlantic corridor, then we'll revisit maybe to protect federally or state by state.
I mean, that's one strategy. But if you're using it in New Jersey, but somebody in California has a federal trademark, you can still get into trouble, right? So the searches are always federal because we want to know. I mean, I had a situation when I was first starting out. I wasn't involved in the business transaction. The client came to me later, but they had bought a local store that was a furniture store. And I think they spent $3 or $4 million for the business. The owner of the store never had a website. He was old school. And so after he bought the business, the new guy put up a website. And within like 3 weeks, he got a cease and desist letter from somebody who had exactly the same name and who was in Maryland and also had a federal trademark. And he wanted the new business owner, the guy who spent the $4 million buying the business, to change his name. And unfortunately, the attorney who had worked on the transaction didn't have the presence of mind to check that, before the sale. Well, the original owner just really relied on local advertising and word of mouth. So the Maryland company never knew that he was doing this, and it didn't become apparent until the website came up. And it was a big hassle for the new owner. He ended up having to change his name, and he ended up losing some brand equity when he was doing that because the old customers would find it harder to find him because he had to make changes to his name.
And I would imagine that's also expensive, signage and advertising and
hang tags and brochures, the whole 9 yards, right? So it's now, really important early on to do this search because you don't want that to happen to you. So
now in your practice, you've been very technologically savvy to be able to communicate and liaise with all these clients. So you come up with a wonderful lemon juice squeezing technology. You put this thing in a box, and 2, 3 steps later, the juice comes out with the most silky smooth pulp you could ever imagine. Now you've got this wonderful contraption. It's made in the USA, of course, because you're a proud American.
Of course.
And how do you protect this new technology, this silky pulp making lemon extractor?
Well, there's really a couple ways to protect the technology. And, the first thing that we always recommend the client consider is this a good trade secret? So if you can keep the process for making the silky smooth lemonade secret, then that may be better than filing a patent application, which is the other option.
Oh, so if you've got a secret sauce and you could keep it secret, you don't have to protect it.
Well, it's protected with a trade secret, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's actually a legitimate type of intellectual property protection. Now, if somebody comes up with the same idea independently, they can patent it, okay? And if they come up with the same idea, you can't stop them from using it if you have a trade secret. So that's one of the disadvantages of having the trade secret. Now, if one of your employees decides they want to start their own company and they take that technology with them, then you can stop that with a trade secret. And if you think that enforcing a patent would be too difficult, because if you're talking about a process that somebody else is using, how are you going to figure out what process they're using, right? You have to be able to reverse engineer it to figure out what the process is. So so trade secrets have their pluses and their minuses, but most recipes are trade secrets. The chefs in the restaurants or the food companies don't necessarily share the amounts of the ingredients, because it's hard to figure out just exactly what the recipe is without doing the reverse engineering part. And sometimes when you're mixing and baking and heating, it becomes very difficult to even understand what they started with. So in some cases, a trade secret is great. If you want to license the trade secret at some point, you want to expand the lemonade stand, then that becomes trickier, because protecting trade secrets when you're transferring them to a different company becomes a little bit more risky, I guess. You can still license a trade secret, but it's not as strong as a patent.
But you bring up a good point, because now your lemonade stand is growing and you have multiple locations, and you're probably going to franchise, and you're expanding, and you're experiencing hyperbolic growth, but you're hiring a lot of people, and a lot of people are kind of looking in your kimono.
Right.
How do you protect your business and your intellectual property from your own team members and colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's not like a perfect solution to this. I mean, to me, it just comes down, to trusting, hiring trustworthy people to the extent you can. Of course, anybody who's ever hired anybody knows that it's not an exact science, right?
But do you have the entire team sign NDAs and confidentialities? Is that how you button up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what you put it in your employment contract, right? So you have the confidentiality. You may put a limited non-compete in. A lot of places don't. A lot of courts don't like non-compete clauses, but you can put those in if they're limited, either geographically or in time. And you can also try to manage the information so that it's just on a need to know basis, right? And if you're going to, the best solution sometimes is just not to give people access to the information to the extent that's possible. But those are the traditional ways to try to protect trade secrets. And if somebody, the other thing is you have to make sure that you keep it a secret, right? You can't have a a trade secret unless if it's not a secret. So you have to take steps to show that you're actually keeping it secret. In the olden days, before electronic files, you used to, put it in a locked file cabinet, write it up and put it in a locked file cabinet where very few people could see it. But now with electronic files, it's a little bit more different. And, you have to ask yourself, are you going to slow down the development of your company by keeping secrets from your employees? So, it depends on what the secret is and, who you want to have access to it. But controlling that information is one way to protect it. So
That's a wonderful point. So now this business is scaling, it's growing, and we have to get the word out. So we hire a social media manager, and they're putting a ton of content. And man, these pages are going viral. Now, who owns the content that we share on social media?
Well, so the creator, so we're talking about copyrights now. And I did want to just kind of go back to the juicer thing.
Yes.
The more traditional way is to protect that with a patent application. And if you get a patent on it, if it's patentable, then you can enforce it against third parties. And it's good for 20 years, which is, more than enough for the life cycle of most products. But it's expensive. So you're going to invest in the US about $20,000 at least,
Okay.
depending on, what firm you hire. But you're going to spend $20,000 protecting that technology. And you have to think about it in terms of, well, what is your market size, right? If you spend $20,000 to protect $100,000 a year in sales, it's probably not a great investment. But if you spend $20,000 to protect $1 million a year in sales, and even if somebody steals it, you just slow them down for 6 months, right? You've still spent $20,000 to protect half of that, half $1 million in sales, right? And so that's how the economics of the patent thing works. But I do want to get back to you on the social media thing. If you're the creator, you're a copyright owner, and you own the copyright to that material. Once you post it on social media, it now becomes subject to the rules of the platform. And so all of the social media platforms have very similar rules. Once you post it, then it becomes fair game for anybody else on that social media platform. So you're giving the social media platform a license for them or any of their users to use that content, right? Now, if people are stealing your content and misrepresenting it as their own, then you have to go to the Facebook or the Instagram or whomever it is. They have their own rules for policing this content, and then you can ask them to take down content that is somehow inappropriate. But if somebody takes that information and they take it off the social media platform, social media rules don't apply anymore. You're still the copyright owner, and you can go after them. So if they take a picture off of your Facebook page and put it on their website, then you can address that. You can contact them and ask them to take it down.
Richard, I feel that you touched on a subject that I've been listening to on the news for the last decade, and that's intellectual property theft and espionage, right? So let's say somebody buys your lemon juicer and ships it out to, well, they're the bad boy in the news. They ship it out to China, and
Okay.
they reverse engineer and they make a made in China Gearhart lemon juicer.
Okay.
It's obviously not as good as yours, but people are buying this stuff on the internet. How do we protect our lemonade stand from these bad actors who mimicked your machine?
That's a great question, and it's a tough one. Again, that's one of those things where there aren't really any, perfect solutions. But there's a couple of things that have worked in the past for us when we have those kinds of situations with clients. First of all, you have to have some sort of intellectual property. So you have to have a patent or a copyright. You can file intellectual property in China. it's still sort of the Wild West out there when it comes to enforcement, but you'd be surprised at the number of Chinese manufacturers, if they get threatened with litigation, they'll stop, right? Because they don't want to be involved in U.S. Litigation. If you have a patent, you can also, if they're selling it, say, on Amazon, you can petition Amazon to review the product and your patent, and they'll have like a little mini proceeding and decide if it's infringing. And if it is, then the other person gets taken off of Amazon. If they're shipping and they're shipping directly to retail outlets, it is possible to file a complaint with the Customs, U.S. Border and Customs, and they will try to identify infringing product as it comes into the country and stop it at the border.
Because they're going to open up every single cargo container just to make sure it's not there, right?
Yeah, I mean that can work, but it's
in theory, in theory it's great, but in practicality, it's difficult to police that.
Yeah, exactly. But it is an option. And we do want our audience to be informed of the possibility. So sometimes if it's a large quantity and you have a simple patent, like a design patent, I have seen cases where they've stopped stuff.
Well, it's nice
and it's very low cost too. I mean, the compared to a patent lawsuit, it's practically nothing. So it's worth trying even if it doesn't work.
No, but Richard, it's great to know that there are mechanisms in place that help entrepreneurial genius and ingenuity from just disappearing. So that's wonderful. Now, I got to tell you, I've listened to your radio show and it's awesome. You've also had a couple of inventors that you've represented have been guests of yours that made it to Shark Tank. Tell us some real fun stories about products that you've represented.
Well, it's been, I think one of them is Create a Castle. They've done really well. And it's an interesting product. We became aware of Kevin and his Create a Castle product through one of an iHeart agent. She was our liaison between the radio show and iHeart, and for a while she was actually a co-host on the program. She was walking down the beach in New Jersey, and she saw this guy making sandcastles using these plastic forms, and he was making this incredible designs using this. And she was watching him for a while, and it's really, you take a plastic bucket, right, and it has deformations in it, and it kind of creates the shape of a castle. And you fill it up with sand, maybe a little bit of water, and then you turn it upside down. It's just like a pail. When kids used to make sand castles using pails, only it's more elaborate because of the way it's designed. It actually comes out looking like a more realistic castle. And so he was, and they have different size forms and all sorts of stuff. And so he was making these in New Jersey along the shore. And she saw him and she said, okay, well, why don't you come on Passage to Profit? And so, he seemed like a good guy, and we interviewed him. And then we introduced him to a lady who specializes on getting products on TV, Lisa Askales. She's the inventress. And so she took his product, pitched it to, I think it was Home Shopping Network, one of the television programs. And he ended up being a big hit. And so he quit his job as a computer programmer, went full-time into the business. And now he's just kicking A all over the place. He's got, his product is distributed in all the big box stores, Walmart, Target. He's like the official castle creator now of Disney. So
the best thing ever to come from the Jersey Shore. I love it.
but he worked.
Rich,
I mean, he worked
Rich,
hard. He would go all around the country, and I think he still does. And he goes to beaches and he makes these sand castles, and that's part of his marketing strategy. So
that's brilliant.
yeah, so it's
Rich, imagine that you and I, after the show, we go grab a drink because we are the Liquid Lunch Project, and we come across this young man at the bar. We love checklists for our clients to take away and apply for themselves. So he's talking to Mr. Richard Gearhart, the copyright consigliere. What are the must-dos for an entrepreneur? Give him his intellectual property checklist when he's starting out.
do a search. That's the first thing. Do your due diligence. If you're trying to decide the name of your company, check it out. I mean, you can hire a firm to do it. If you're tight on funds, then you can do some work yourself. But when it comes to selecting your name, and then if you're putting a new product out there, even if you haven't seen it on the internet or you're not aware of it, unless you have a lot of really deep industry experience where the products out there, you still need to do a patent search to make sure that somebody else doesn't have a patent that blocks you. We get a lot of business from people who don't do this, and that's because they either don't know about it, they don't think about it, but they launch, and then a couple of years later, after they're all in, all the money on advertising, branding, packaging, product production, they get a letter saying you're infringing. They're like, now what do I do? And the legal bills go up, and so do the sleepless nights, right? Because now you've got this big distraction. I mean, running a business is hard enough. You don't need legal stuff that threatens your product and your core business. So you can avoid so much of that. This is America. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, right? I mean, remember somebody sued McDonald's for a hot cup of coffee, right? So you can't necessarily prevent stuff 100%, but if you do your diligence early on, you do the patent search, you do the trademark search, you use confidentiality agreements when you're talking with vendors, protect yourself. And then if you get into the habit of doing that early in your business, or if you haven't been doing it, it's never too late, right? But if you get in the habit of doing that, then you stand a better chance of avoiding a lot of these problems. And
very sage advice from the copyright consigliere. I love it. Richard, contrary to how the adage goes, you do not have a face for radio. So please tell the audience where they could find your wonderful radio show, your law firm, and you on the social, so they can reach out and engage you for intellectual property needs.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm always happy to talk with anybody about intellectual property. You can probably guess I like flapping my gums, and so but I'm happy to talk about it. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn page. Passage to Profit Show. We have our website. It's passagetoprofitshow.com. You can hear us on WOR 710 in New York, and we're also syndicated in 39 other markets right now. The radio program is doing great, and we just recently added Guam to our affiliate list, so we're officially international now. And but you can find our programs, times there. Basically, we're on from between 6 and 8 on most of those stations in most of those markets. Gearhartlaw.com is our website. We have YouTube channels. We have, there it is. That's us. It's very nice. And you can see us on YouTube. You can see us on Instagram. I think we have a Facebook account too. And that's for Passage to Profit. And, as well, we have the Passage to Profit show on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So we're out there. If you just type it in the command line, you'll find us somehow. And
find Richard. He's a wealth of knowledge. Richard, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We always want to be respectful of our guests' time. But before I let you go, I would love for you to part upon us one last piece of sage advice. During the course of the last half hour, you have revolutionized my internal thoughts on attorneys. You have a very nice bedside manner, and you are not icky in the least. What do you attribute this peaceful, calm, elegant demeanor? Is it your Midwest upbringing? Did you marry a supermodel? All of the above. What is
all of the above?
How can an entrepreneur find balance in dealing with a crazy world?
That's great. And I appreciate your comments. I don't feel like I'm fully there yet. It's just been a lot of work and a lot of self-introspection and really a desire to be authentic and relatable. I think sometimes professionals, attorneys they almost want to be a little bit on the arrogant side, and I don't want to be like that. I want to be relatable. I want to have good relationships with my clients and my coworkers, and that's my goal. So I work toward that, and that's all I can say.
Well, you're successful. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's a wrap of another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's go.